Good evening, everyone. It is now 6:30 p.m. and we will begin our committee of the whole meeting for January 10th. Roll call. Here. She here. Franklin. Here. Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Please stand for our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Our mission statement is to educate, empower, and inspire the whole child. Oh, okay, okay.
No, so essentially it was something we were talking about in the previous meeting around just being more efficient with the updates. The idea is to have continuous updates on a monthly basis from the schools as well as different departments that we kind of get reports on a more expansive criteria that when it's presented to us. So really it's a template, just like a one-page template, just to go over some things that the board will agree on that we want to get updates on moving forward. And the expectation will be that it'll be updated on a monthly basis, so there won't be any surprises when there's larger presentations that are given. So that was kind of the gist around that. I've sent an example of something that we could kind of work on to Dr. Brunson back in December, and so the idea is to kind of work together as a board and come to an agreement on what we want to see, and that'll be kind of the standard for the principals when they're reporting back out to us, as well as various departments within central office.
So some of those goals, if you have in front of you or in your board docs, was our academic and personal growth, our community relations, our staff relations, recruitment, business and finance, and our professional development. This would include collective vision, effective systems, inclusive leadership, learning culture, transformative equity, and trusting community. Anybody see any other additional things that they would like to see added? And it's just basically like when we have our committee of the whole meetings, how the updates that we want Dr. Brunson to bring forth to us so that we are aware of what's going on. For instance, building and grounds, what projects are going on, when they will be started on, when they will be completed, what's going on in each building as far as updates, the summer programs, our winter, not programs, but the summer things that we have, projects, the winter projects. These are some of the things that we said we can utilize at our committee of the whole. That way when we're having our regular meetings, we're just pretty much voting, and we're just going in for just straight business votes.
So I think one of the things we wanted to get clarity on is exactly what the board wants as far as the high level information that you all want, just so that we can be very clear on exactly what you all want, so you can agree that this is the information that you all would like to see. So we just want to be as clear as possible, so that because everyone that's here would be people who are going to be providing updates. So what kind of updates, and just for clarity, so that we can make sure that we're providing you all with the information that you desire.
Actually, this one is Mrs. Fields, so for you with the
curriculum, the curriculum that we implemented over the past year, just trying to see where we were before we implemented it and then where we are now, like kind of gauge whether or not it's working, especially for the things that we've signed up for, 4 or 5 years, Epiphany, where we are with that, if it's working and where we started and who's using it, who's not, things like that. And I think you've been providing that, but just a little bit more of a overview of this is where we were in August, this is where we are in December, whether or not we're moving the needle.
For me, I'd like to see something about the STEM Center, how many classes are coming, how many students are coming, how many classes didn't come at all, how many students haven't been here at all. I know you're walking into this, and it's not where we can get the students here as frequently as we would like, but I would like to know that we're not missing any students having an opportunity to come to the STEM Center and be a part of that educational process. So just kind of finding out who's falling through the loops on that.
So just to take a step back on this, I think we have kind of different criteria that we are measuring, whether that be annual goals that we're looking at in super eval, right? And so the idea around the template was to have those categories, right, for whatever is being evaluated, and then we basically see on a month-to-month basis what's being done towards those goals, right? So if it's the principals, they have different things that they're working on towards their annual reviews, their annual goals. It'd be, okay, this month we did X, Y, Z that falls under, whatever categories under the annual goals, right? So it's like the framework is already in place. It's a matter of just providing those updates on a regular basis so we can see them. And so that way, as the year's going along, it's continuous progress that continues seeing the progress on what their actual plans are to meet those goals, right? So, like, the first point would be to kind of look at what those are. We could list them out, and then when they fill out the template, that's what will go in there. Like, here's what we did in January pertaining to this, right? And then you can break it down by department, by school. That was the idea. So it's really a work in place, a work in progress, and it's broad. Yeah.
So I think the best thing to do is kind of how you do our bordergrams with a running document. We probably could just do the same thing for each department. Just know our programs and then just a running document. Hey, this was where we were in January. Come 6 months from now, this is where we are. And just keep a running, just kind of like a running doc on it, I think.
Mr. Williams, is this something that you were looking for every month? Were you looking for something every month to be, or is it something quarterly? Because I love the idea of what you're saying, because it's going to make it real easy when it comes time to look at contracts, whether the contracts are going to extend it or not based on this, because now it's following their evaluation tool.
Yeah, I think the frequency item out was monthly. So it'll cut down on, say, for example, there's a presentation that needs to, or is scheduled to happen, typically that we've done. If we pretty much know what's going on in that space, we might not have to have a full, robust, presentation on it. Because if we're tracking, if there's something in place where we're just tracking the work that's being done towards the goals that we have set in place as a board, as a school district, on the school level, then it's really just to help get better organized in that frame, and have us have the information as well on a more continuous basis.
Okay, so you're aware of that. Any other questions in regards to that? So that includes our Board of Education report. Turn it over to you, Dr. Foster, for superintendent's report.
All right. So thank you for that. So as it relates to that, what we'll do is give a draft of some things, and then we, like you said, it's a work in progress, so that we make sure it's exactly the things that, high-level things that you all want to know about. So we'll start crafting something based on those goals, and then we will work on it together so that we can make sure that we fine-tune it and it is meeting everyone's expectations. One of the announcements that we have is that we have our new Assistant Superintendent of Educational Services and Operations, Dr. Lee, has started. He started on Monday, and he is here this evening, and so we want to give him a warm welcome. And then we're going to move right into Mrs. O'Donovan. She's going to give us a presentation on the GATE program.
Good evening. Happy New Year. Welcome back. Good to see you all. It has been my honor and privilege to work with our Gifted and Talented Education program for the last several years. And so tonight I come to you with some information about where we're currently at, some things we can do to kind of fine tune and change it. So that's what we're going to look at this evening. So as we start talking about gifted education, the first thing that we have to look at is what is gifted education. And so we look at ESB, and ESB is very clear in their definition as to what gifted education is defined at. And we're looking at typically the top 5% of students who are scoring locally within our district. In terms of the area of aptitude. So that doesn't necessarily mean always academics. It could be in different areas in terms of artistic ability, their creative ability, leadership, those types of skills as well. And students who need additional services over and above what they typically receive in the classroom. So looking at all of that. So if we look at this top 5%, as a district, we're looking at servicing, typically we have about 1,100 K through 5 students. So that would be servicing about 5% would be about 55 students of our top 5%. Last year, according to our school report card, we had 34 students that were identified as gifted and talented. So looking at this program, starting back in the 2017-2018 school year, ESD 159 implemented the self-contained gifted education program housed at Neil Armstrong School. This is a program for our students that are in 2nd to 5th grade, and it services students district-wide. So it doesn't matter what your home school is. If you qualify for the gifted program, you are invited to join the program located at Neil Armstrong School. Ideally, this is a full-day program for each grade level. However, based on enrollment, sometimes we have to make some modifications. For example, this year we have 6 2nd grade students. Therefore, we cannot host an all-day program with only 6 students. It is a pull-out program. So what does that look like? We have a GATE teacher who is certified to teach over there. She pulls the students for about 75% of their day for ELA and math instruction. The remainder of their day is spent with their grade level peers, where they receive science and social studies instruction with the 2nd grade teacher, as well as their specials lunch as their typical day. In the past, we have had split classes. For example, last year we had a 2nd and 3rd grade split class. We've also done 4th and 5th grade split based on enrollment. So this varies from year to year based on the number of students who qualify as well as who opt to attend. So let's look at our qualification process. This is for students in 1st through 4th grade. This process is going to be starting here in the next couple of weeks. It starts after the winter NWEA assessment. After the winter NWEA assessment, all 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade data is evaluated for ELA and math. Students who scored in the 75th percentile or higher for 3 of the 4 assessments. So we have fall ELA, fall math, winter ELA, winter math. If they score in the 75th percentile or above on 3 of those 4, they receive an invitation to take what is called the COLGAT assessment, which is the Cognitive Abilities Assessment. Students and parents have the option of enrolling for this assessment. Typically, this assessment is given in February, early March before IAR. It is given to all of our 1st through 4th grade students who qualify based on that criteria. We also collect what we call the Teacher Inventory Behavioral Checklist. When we say behavioral, it's not necessarily based on a student's behavior, it's based on their learning behaviors. So what do teachers notice about students' learning behaviors in classrooms? Are students able to analyze the opinions of others? Are they able to look at different types of comments from students in before they make their rationale? Those types of things. So we collect that from the classroom teacher. After the spring NWEA assessment, all the data is analyzed and then a recommendation is made. We use what is called the student matrix rubric, and it collects 11 points of data. So 6 points of data from NWEA, 4 from the Colgat, and then our teacher behavioral checklist. Students must have a score of at least 65 points overall, and one of those data points has to come from the Colgat assessment. Speaking about the Colgat assessment, what is that? I typically tell the students this is unlike any assessment you've ever taken. They're used to academic-based assessments. Colgat is a reasoning skills assessment. So it doesn't ask your typical math, science, social or reading questions. It's asking reasoning types questionings. I have 2 of them up here for you. It assesses in 3 different areas. It looks at your verbal, nonverbal, and your quantitative reasoning skills. So the one at the top is asking the students to look at the relationship between the 2 shapes at the top and have the 2 shapes at the bottom do the same change. So they have to be able to recognize that the shape at the top had rotated and then be able to identify that same rotation in the bottom row. The second example is from my favorite session, which is the paper folding. So it gives students examples of the paper that is folded, and then there's a change in the paper. In this case, there were holes punched. So what would the paper look like when it is opened? So it's looking at more of the reasoning type skills. This is a national normed assessment, so we are able to get data on those 4 different data points, the quantitative reasoning, the nonverbal, and the verbal, as well as an overall score. First grade is a proctor assessment. So I go in and I pull the first graders, I read the question to them, and they click on it. 2nd through 4th grade is audio. So they have headphones on, they go through. It is also timed for those grade levels, so they have 10 minutes to complete each section. And most of the time students are finished before that anyways. They really like these types of questions because they're different than what they typically see on any other type of assessment. Then we get a report that looks like your image here on the bottom left-hand side, and it breaks down all of the data, and it gives us that normative data that we can use when we're looking to make a recommendation. Our current GATE program at Neil Armstrong, currently in 2nd grade, we have 6 students, 3rd grade 10 students, 4th grade 9 students, and 5th grade 12 students, for a total of 34 students, and we do have full 4 teachers over there that service these students. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade are with those students all day long. 2nd grade, she has a split schedule where part of the day she's working with her students and part of the day she is working with different groups of students.
So out of all of the students in our district, we only have 37?
That qualify under our current requirements. Now, that does not mean that there aren't other students that qualify. That means that there may be other students that qualify that chose not to attend. We do have instances where parents would rather that their children stay at their home school than travel to Neil Armstrong. So it is a very big decision as a family to make, because if I say, for example, Woodgate is my home school and my student qualifies, I may or may not want them to travel to Neil Armstrong.
Right, so can we get like a survey done on how many, or just know the numbers of how many students actually qualify, even the ones that turned it down, because 37 students to have to go to one school, it's not a lot of students.
And 37
Correct.
students with 4 teachers, when we have other classrooms that have 20 plus.
And that's
Yeah,
not-
that doesn't
And
add
you
up.
got, these classes.
Because that's what I thought the point of the
less than 10
presentation
kids.
was, to see how we can pull out of Neil Armstrong to get our kids to.
Yeah.
I have some recommendations as we continue.
Okay.
What is the average size of our classrooms in outside of the GATE program?
Depends on the building.
Average size? 16, 17. Thank you.
Now, one of the things that we looked at too in terms of the program was the alignment in what are our outcomes. Are we seeing some positive outcomes with our students? So looking at the NWEA and the IAR alignment, these charts give us an idea of how students are performing on NWEA. Since we use 6 data points for NWEA, it's really a huge chunk of how students qualify. So looking at how do students have to perform on NWEA in order to either meet or exceed on IAR. So one of the main things for the GATE program, we use the percentages rather than the RIT scores. So looking at the percentages, if you notice, for example, for mathematics on the right-hand side in 8th grade, I have to be scoring in the 98th or 99th percentile in order to be exceeding on IAR. So really looking at some of those higher level questions. Now in terms of the IAR data, our 3rd through 5th graders, now this is the enrollment from last year because we had our spring data, and remember 2nd graders do not take IAR, so they're not included in these counts. We had a total of 25 students, 18 met on ELA, 4 exceeded, 16 met on math, and 2 exceeded on math. I also included Cole and Powell. Now, Cole and Powell, we have the accelerated programs. One of the wonderful things about the middle school setup is that with our accelerated programs, students do not have to be in all accelerated classes. So if, for example, math is your really strong point, I may qualify for math only, and I'm in totally different classes for ELA and science. Or science may really be my thing, and I'm in accelerated science, but I don't necessarily qualify for ELA or math. So that's why you see the enrollment could be different for ELA or math, because you have some students that may not be in both. As a total, we had 69 students enrolled in accelerated classes for ELA, 33 met, 13 exceeded. And for math, we had 59 enrolled, 29 met, and 2 exceeded. One of the wonderful things I want to point out about this is our 8th grade. If you look at our 8th grade students, we had 21 enrolled for ELA, 10 met, 10 exceeded. So when we look at the duration of when our students go through our program, there is some fluctuating throughout the grade levels. However, by the time they get to 8th grade, they're really showing that they have mastered what it is that they need to master for the grade level.
But for 8th grade, for the total, you had 59 enrolled, but
For math. For math?
technically, yeah, but only 31 of the 59, so the other ones are below.
They are, typically they fall in the partially met. So out of the 5 categories on IAR, right below the meet is a partially meet and then approaching meet. And so typically those students that are not meeting, they fall in the partially met category.
But should we be expecting at least meeting if this is supposed to be
Exactly.
the, the accelerated? This is beyond
Yes.
honors, this is accelerated, so we should be seeing numbers that should at least be meeting.
Yes. Now, with the accelerated classes, we do not have the same expectations as the GATE program for qualifications. So at the middle school for our accelerated classes, we do not give the COGAT assessment. They are based solely on their NWEA assessments, and typically in the past, it is an average of the 80th percentile or higher of the last 3 assessments. So if I'm a 5th grader, my fall, my winter, and my spring, I would take the average of all 3 of those percentiles, and that's how we would put our students in classes. However, based on the numbers, sometimes those percentiles have to fluctuate because I may only have 11 students that fall in that 80th percentile or above. I can't keep a whole class open with just 11 and have another class that has 30. And so looking at adjusting some of that. So we have had instances at the middle school, for example, last year, 6th grade math, there was only 1 class that contained both the honors and the accelerated because we had to differentiate the way that we did it in order to have enough students to keep that course open.
So what's the cutoff for honors then? If we're saying accelerated, we're looking at
70th percentile.
But even so, looking at a 70th or 80th percentile on NWEA, and it's still not equating to meeting?
Not always, no. And the one thing that I always have to remind myself is this is a snapshot of students.
I understand that.
IAR is. It's really just one data point that we look at. Ideally, all of our students, all 1,600 of them would be meeting and exceeding. So even though we're not getting the ideal outcome where we want everybody exceeding, we are showing that our students are making growth as they are working through the
And
program.
understanding, but I mean, honestly, I just feel like, you know, these are the students, especially in the younger grades with the smaller class sizes, that should be, you know, and showing that growth, you know, at least meeting and exceeding on the IAR. And the IAR is what the state, you know, I understand we've got our local assessment, but the IAR is what the state is looking at. You know, and if we've got students that we're saying are, you know, gifted and talented, and believe me, I understand that, and I do, but I feel like there's a disconnect or something, just because it's not producing.
That's my concern. So if we go back to Neil Armstrong's results, we're looking at ELA, we only have 4 students that exceed. For math, we only have 2 students that exceed. So my question would be, when my children were in the district, we had 3 classes in kindergarten, and because our numbers were like 10 per class, then they got rid of 1 class and we didn't have 3 classes, we had 2. So our numbers are really low in this program for participation, and then those who are exceeding, that percentile is low as well. I don't understand keeping it in place instead of a pull-out program in the buildings in the areas in which they live. So Dr. Brunson, if you had low enrollment in classrooms, Gen Ed, what would cause you to combine classes? What number would you look at to combine those classes?
Are you talking about just Gen Ed, period?
Yes.
Definitely around 10 or 11. I mean,
We're there.
So, yes, this is why we're having this conversation, because if we're thinking about changing this, that's why we're bringing it to discuss. How do we change this? Because it definitely is an issue, which is why we're having this discussion as to what we're going to do next.
Use the microphone.
My question is, how do we get them back into their home schools? Because some parents not comfortable with them going to Neil Armstrong, and children learn from children. And from what I've always experienced, they help each other. So why can't we have you, I'm sorry, Ms. Donovan, just bounce to the schools and not move the kids?
So
It's
as
a
an option.
possibility. It's a possibility.
Right, that's why, because, which is why we're having this discussion as to, do we take those 4 teachers and put them in one at each school? And then have
That's
pull-out
another-
program, but then they would be servicing students from 2nd to 5th grade.
So when you say servicing students from 2nd to 5th grade, are they still only servicing the students who are excelling, or are they able to help those who are on the fence and can help them cross over?
Well, it would depend on how we create the criteria and how we structure it, which is why we're having a conversation as to, you know, is there like she has some recommendations, so because we've been looking at this, and so we have some recommendations, you know, so that we can talk about it and decide, is that something for next school year that we would like to give a try to, and see if that would yield better results. I think it's a much more robust conversation that is, it's a yes and, in addition to the discussion about the GATE program, just making sure, which is what we're really working on, is that providing high quality tier 1 instruction, period, for all of our students.
Because this is actually a new thing, Dr. Brunson. It hasn't been around that long,
Mm-hmm.
which is why we can revert back, because it's not working. If you look at how many students are actually being listed as gifted, compared to even the past, and it wasn't like that. So I don't personally think that this program is working for our kids.
So now when we look at the critical content of gifted education, we have to be mindful of what we call it, because the state does have some stipulations in place for gifted education. There is a whole document that was released by the National Association of Gifted Education, and in there we talk about 3 different areas that we have to be mindful of with addressing gifted education in schools. One of them is being able to identify those students who need gifted services, which we have a process in place. The next one is being able to provide differentiated experiences for those students. And research really says that ability-based grouping is effective for our gifted students. So similar to the model that we have now, that they're learning in the environment with peers that are about the same academic level. Looking at the teachers and the professional development that we provide to those teachers in order to deliver that high quality instruction to our gifted learners. So we actually have a partnership with 2 different groups that we use. One of them is the Illinois Association of Gifted Children. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers attended the annual conference this past October for additional professional development. We also have a partnership with Northwestern and their Center for Talent Development. And all new teachers to the district, as well as any teachers who are new to teaching either a gifted class or an accelerated class, are required to attend what is they call their 2-week boot camp. And it basically is the Center of Talent Development provides a professional development to help teachers hone in on their craft of providing high quality gifted education instruction. We also had some teachers who are not part of the program that just reached out and said, hey, I want to learn how to better support my high learners. Can I do it as well? So we had, I think we had 14 teachers that participated this past October in that gifted education boot camp. Yeah. Now, looking at some options for the GATE program, if we were looking at expanding the GATE program, as you had saw, the numbers just don't justify having the same program at each building that we have right now. If we look at our current numbers per building, we have 12 at Yates, 14 at Armstrong, 4 at Seton, 7 at Woodgate for a total of 37 students. So we would need to hire additional staff, looking at all of the housing, where would we put them? There's really a lot that would have to go into that if we wanted to open it up to how it currently is. After our winter NWEA assessment, I will have more information about how many students qualify for the COLGAT. Now remember, if we look at the COLGAT, those are our students that may not have qualified for the GATE program, but are still achieving at the 75th percentile or above consistently on at least 3 of the last 4 assessments. So they may benefit as well. So another option that we can do is opening up an enrichment program. And it would be more of a pull-out program where we would have teachers. We could either have 1 teacher in each building, we could have 2 teachers that share and split between buildings depending on the model that we wanted to go with, and they would pull students out. So the students would be getting instruction during their pull-out in addition to their core 1 instruction that they're getting in the classroom. So we always think of intervention, right? Thinking about providing interventions. This would be providing enrichment for those students that would qualify.
Ms. O'Donovan, is this more of the model when, like, Paula Priest and
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
It would be the model that we had prior to what we did
Okay,
before.
perfect.
Yep, absolutely. So what we would do is we'd have to create the qualifications for how are we going to set this up? What criteria do students need to meet in order to participate? There's a lot of flexibility that we could do there, because it doesn't have to be an end-all be-all program where I have to qualify for everything. We could have some flexibility in terms of, 2nd grade is working on multiplication, and I did my pre-assessment and I tested out on multiplication, so I'm going to spend the next couple of weeks going with the enrichment teacher so she can provide she or he could provide some enrichment activities on that skill. So we have some flexibility of how we want to set it up based on what your vision is for what you want it to look like. We also could look at changing the groups, so whether or not we want to have groups be fluid and be able to move. We can also have students qualify based on different content areas. Just like with the middle school, reading may be my thing, math may not. So I may go for only reading enrichment and not math enrichment. And so looking at how we would want to do that, very similar to the way that we had it set up prior to the 2017-2018 school year. I also included the Colgat numbers in there in the past. Remember, Colgat numbers represent the number of students that qualified for the test, so 75th percentile or higher on 3 of the 4 assessments. So you can notice the numbers. 2018, we had 60 students, 2019, 62, 2020, 34. We all know what happened in the spring of 2020, right? COVID hit. So we took that hit as well as in 2021 and 2022, and then spring of last year, you saw we were able to pull those numbers back up. However, currently right now, we only have 37 of those students enrolled in the program. So looking at that. Now, this is how many qualified for the Colgat assessment. So they may not have qualified for the program, but they are showing performance of the 75th percentile or higher consistently. Yeah. So they may not, I may not have qualified for it because I didn't do all the content areas, but I would still benefit from some sort of enrichment. Yeah.
I understand it. I had a kid that didn't do well twice, and I kept pushing her till she got in. So I get it.
Absolutely. Now, if we wanted to go with this option, some things we would have to keep in mind or consider, looking at the qualification criteria, how would we set that up? What would that look like? What data points would we collect in order to get students to qualify for that program? We'd also have to look at the model we want to set up for staff. Do we want to have them travel to buildings? Do we want to have one housed in each building? What additional space would we need? What space would we know space is an issue in some of our buildings, so where would we house our enrichment teachers? Looking at additional funding to provide curriculum, supplies, teacher training, all of that. Please keep in mind that we'd have to use our school-based funding. There isn't any sort of national, federal funding for gifted education, even though it's required to address the needs of those students. So we would have to use our school-based funding for that.
Which building do you think we would have the most difficulty with spacing in? Because we're expanding Seton Prairie, we have space at Maria Yates, Neil Armstrong has space, so.
Yeah, it may be like maybe one classroom per space. So we should
Even
be
the
okay.
science lab, we should be able to use that.
Yeah, we should be okay. Yep.
And we could be flexible with the schedule
Yes.
in terms of working with our interventionist. When our interventionist there providing services as opposed to our enrichment teachers, so that they may be able to share a space as well. Yeah. Just something to keep in mind as we start to think about that. Okay?
One question, because you
Sure.
talked about it being building-based budget.
Mhm.
So is it just additional funds given to Neil Armstrong now because it's all in one building?
That would be a Ms. Owens question. I believe we have a gifted fund that we started, correct, Ms. Owens? Can you speak to that?
Yes, so our students that are in our gifted program, we have a special function that we're supposed to use. And so within the last 2 years, I've made sure that the district has codes to represent how much we're spending on our gifted students. And so it's a different function number.
Okay, got it.
Can you provide that so we'll know the cost point?
Are there any other questions for me?
You may not have, you may have had it in here. I still was having sidebar conversations, unfortunately, but was there a way that you looked at it that for each building?
Yes,
Can you go
about
back
how
to
many
that?
students who are currently enrolled. So in our GATE program right now, if we were to break it down by building, there's 12 students that are being serviced by Neil Armstrong, but Yates is their home school. 14 students that are in the gifted program that Armstrong is their home school. 4 Seton Prairie students that are being serviced that Seton Prairie is their home school, and 7 Woodgate students that are at Neil Armstrong, but Woodgate is their home school.
So I guess my question is, if they were to stay at their home schools and be in their classes, how does the curriculum go around those gifted kids, or do they have to be pulled out because they have different
In
structure?
terms of the enrichment program?
Mm-hmm.
So we would set it up very similar to the pull-out model, where we would have a separate curriculum, separate activities that they would get, and they would be pulled out from their day-to-day classroom. So, for example, if I was at Woodgate, I may pull out Susie, Bobby, and Tommy, and they're working on a particular skill.
Because it's not,
with
because
a
I'm just asking, because it's not that many, so they can get pulled out, because it's not that
They
many.
could, and now remember, these are just the gifted students. So if we're looking at opening it up for enrichment, we could actually increase these numbers because we could set the criteria to include those students who may not have qualified for the GATE program, but would certainly benefit from enrichment.
Do you by any chance know of those 12 students, how many per grade level?
I'd have to look at the breakdown per grade level, but it's, 5th grade is our largest section that we have, majority of our fifth grade class is, very, very much from all the buildings. Yeah. But that's why we just have to be very mindful of what we call it because of what the state requires for different explanations. If we call it a gifted program, the stipulations are very different than if we call it an enrichment program. It gives us some flexibility with that enrichment program. We could even do where we keep the GATE program as it is. I don't have the Colgate numbers of right now. We don't have our NWEA for winter yet, but after our winter NWEA, I would be able to provide you with that number. This past spring, it was 52 students, so we'll see how many students qualify for Colgate after this NWEA assessment window.
Because I don't think we want to lower our kids' standards.
Correct.
We don't want to lower the standards, but if they're not even meeting in the gifted program or excelling, then we still just have to figure out why not. I think that's the bigger picture.
So looking at addressing our resources and curriculum that we're utilizing within the program, that would be the other aspect that we would have to look at.
And then we probably would need to consider what the parents' input is on it, because I was around when this started, and so there were some parents that did show up, and they wanted their kids to be in a gifted program, housed in separate from the rest. Not all of us were in agreement, and I was one, even though my children were in the program.
So, but she was just pulled out of her classroom.
I had them in both. I had them in the pullout, and I just didn't see the benefit of putting it in one school.
Yeah, me neither.
It truly is a family decision whether or not you want your child to be in that location for the gifted program. From the conversations that I have had, the parents are very happy and they are happy with the program.
And that's why I'm saying we're going to have to talk to those parents.
But it's not that many, though.
Right,
not
and
that
that's
many.
the thing. I mean, honestly, if my child was in a class of 9, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
It's like going to a parochial school, and there is going to be some kickback, so we do need to.
So that may be a
ensure we-
discussion that we need to have in terms of just eliminating it completely, kind of phasing it out. Instead of adding 2nd grade next year, our 2nd graders would go to 3rd grade, and we don't have that that 2nd grade class, and we kind of phase it out over a couple of years. That would be another option that we could do, rather than just saying we're getting rid of it all completely. We kind of do, you know what I mean?
I think it's just more so just finding a way to house it at their home schools.
Yeah.
I think, and not all at Neil Armstrong, especially not for 37 students. And those teachers can be utilized in our buildings as a whole. And then we also just know a method, whether it's the pull-out method, see how that goes back. And I take it completely away and I switch the name to enrichment because now we're lowering our kids' standards, which is not beneficial to the ones who are actually gifted. So we don't want to take it away from them, but we just want to make sure that because even with our test scores, we have all the smart kids at one location, or the gifted kids technically at one location, and then we're noticing our test scores are going down, but those kids are just being pulled out for just certain subjects, but they're still at this school for everything. And I just think that they can benefit the kids that they're around, and she said,
They learn from each other.
learning from each other and growing with one another.
Yep.
I think that method is better.
Now, in terms of test scores, their test scores for IER are reported to their home schools. So Armstrong doesn't get all of the test scores for the gifted program. Armstrong is just what they call their servicing school. Their test scores go to their home school. So when we look at that breakdown of how many there are per school, their test scores are going to that particular school.
And that was one of the requirements that they have did the program.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But am I wrong? When we first started this program, I do believe we did lower requirement for participation because we couldn't get the numbers that we need. Am I not remembering that correctly?
So the first year for the GATE program, I was not involved. I was actually the classroom teacher.
Right.
I taught the 4th grade self-contained gifted program, so I
As
wasn't
Miss
involved
Lechin-
in those conversations in terms of what that looked like. Over the last several years, we have not done any type of fluctuation in terms of the data that we collect or the expectations for students to meet that data in order to qualify.
One last question. When we started this program, one of the concerns were if you had a student who was in the program who tested and qualified, and then let's say they were in their classes and after the first year they did not qualify anymore. We've had 2 students in that situation and they had to go back to the homeschool, which was a problem for me. I didn't want that to happen because what does that do to the psyche? Have we had that happen again?
It has been some time since students have been removed from the program due to performance. Typically, the process is that students would receive an probation letter, and that conversation with parents and students typically lights a fire underneath them to get them to do, to raise what they need to do to meet the
Okay,
expectations.
so we've had probation but not removal.
Correct. In the last couple of years, especially since COVID, we haven't pulled anybody out. We had some students that have chosen, the parents have elected to pull their students, and typically what they will do is, depending on what their homeschool is, if it's a parent from another homeschool, they're pulling because they want them to go back to their homeschool. It's that type of situation. But we have not removed students from the program at Neil Armstrong since before COVID. It's been some years. Thank you.
And I just have one last question. Does it cost us, how much does it cost us to take the 37 school kids to their, somebody else must be on, to get to their schools since it's not in their district? Like, do we pay another bus, do we pay buses a different amount to pick up those kids to get them all to taken over to the school? Like, it has to be, is no price scheduled to that? I mean, put in with that?
Not transportation wise. We just schedule.
So they're being transported, but it's not an invoice that shows just those students and how much it costs to transport.
But I'm saying it's an extra route added because they have to get,
In years
So-
past, it has been a different route. I believe this year they had to combine the routes due to the number of bus drivers. So this year, our gifted students ride the same bus as some of the other Neil Armstrong. They only have 2 routes that run from their building. Yes,
Okay.
but in years past, it has been a separate route that students would get on in order to go to Neil Armstrong. So that route would run all the way from Tinley Park, because we have some students from Yates, and then all the way through the Richmond Park area for those students that needed to come, that were closer to Neil Armstrong.
okay.
And then
Yeah.
Ms. Owens, with the dollar amount for the entire program, is that going to include the salaries for those 4 teachers? Yes. Okay, thank you.
And we included, I know Ms. Owens and I had a conversation, we included curriculum type things, professional development, that was all included in there as well. Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. My set is ready. You can. All right, so Chris and I were talking about this tuition waiver. So I'm bringing it to our board so that we can discuss this. So there is a new policy, and we have the opportunity to adopt it or to not adopt it. But the tuition waiver cites that the school district may adopt a policy to waive tuition costs for a non-resident pupil if the pupil is a child of a district employee. For purposes of this paragraph, child means biological, adopted, foster, stepchild, or child for which the employee serves as legal guardian. if we adopt this, this is my proposal, and so, and I'm going to give you my proposal, and then we can have the conversation. And then, as a board, you have to decide, is this something that you are interested in doing? So my proposal, I would say that PFA, which is preschool for all, would only be available for the community that we serve, because those are actual spaces that would be taken away from our students in our community. But if you are a teacher or staff, then your children would attend your home school, or if you are a CPS staff with elementary age children, they would attend the school with the lowest enrollment. So that's my recommendation if we decide to even proceed. I can tell you the surrounding districts in South Cook, there are 6 that offer it currently, and there are 5 who intend next school year to offer the tuition waiver. So I did speak with Vanessa Kinder regarding this, and this is where we are. So I'll open the floor for discussion.
I have 2 questions.
Yes.
Do we have any idea how many students would be coming?
Yeah, I didn't survey the teachers or staff. I didn't go that far.
Okay.
Because I didn't think to go that far yet until we decide if this is even a road we would like to travel down, because I'm not sure. I can tell you that there is one teacher in particular at Colin Powell who actually asked me about this, because she knows in the surrounding district that they do that, and she would like her child to attend our school district.
And then your recommendation, I like it, but if we have openings for preschool for all, I know we have a waiting list right now.
We have 50 families waiting list.
But if there is an opening, I wouldn't want to just close that off if by chance we had an opening.
Yeah, PFA is a little bit different because of the way it's set up in the grants and things like that.
Okay.
So that's the reason why I think it's just important for us to let people know that that is not be an offering that we would provide, because PFA is paid for through grants, a grant from the state of Illinois. Okay, I can send that out. Mm-hmm. 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 Correct. Okay, yeah. I will send that out. I can actually send something out tomorrow and just let them know that we are considering it, but we'd like to get a better understanding. I did not do that on the front end because I wasn't even sure if you all were interested in, even offering it, so I didn't do that on the front end. But I can definitely do that.
Okay, so Dr. Brunson,
Hey.
according to ISB, right now, this district is spending $21,000 to educate one child.
Mm-hmm.
So are we saying, let's say we get 15 kids, that we're going to educate them at no cost?
We are giving them a waiver because the policy right now says that all students must attend where they live, their home school, but anyone can actually ask us if they can attend our school, but they would pay tuition. You can always do that. It says that. But we're saying that we're going to waive that.
We would need to know because we're feeding them as well. It's a lot that we're doing. So if we could, I agree with.
Okay, you want to find out how many? Absolutely. Yep.
I guess it's because they haven't started depending on where our teachers live.
Well, that's not a part for me.
No, we're not transporting anyone.
No.
They're gonna
No,
get.
they
They
would
probably
come
sit
to
next.
work
They
with
probably
mom.
sit in the car next to their parent.
I'm speaking on weird. Okay, let me just get. Okay, maybe
Mhm.
I don't
Yes.
because I don't want to sound like
Cautious.
Yeah, I want to be cautious on how I'm saying it. So let's just say that a teacher lives in an area where they know our district is better, and then we open this up. They send them to our district. Our teachers are now taking care of them, and they're not paying anything to send there, even though they're working with us, which work for us, which is fine. But then now our teachers that are currently here are even having to teach more kids, because now we're probably gonna end up with more kids coming because technically, we do have some amazing teachers. So those are the chances that we'll be taking. I just want to make sure I'm understanding.
Oh, yeah, it's always a chance. I mean, and you can have a cutoff. You can say, I mean, if you adopt the policy, you can write this how you want, saying first, I don't know, 25. I'm just throwing out a number. But it's up to you, but it would be, this is a tuition waiver. This policy, go back, that's what it is.
And
Because
that's as long,
Because we're not bringing anything
Pardon me?
in right now, even with our students, because we've been waiving the fees.
yeah,
No,
but
this
not
is
fees.
this is how much it costs us to educate a child.
Right now, we're paying $21,000 per student to educate one child. So if we bring their kids in, we're saying you don't have to pay a dime of that $21,000. We're just gonna allow it because your parent works here. So once the parent leaves, the child would need to leave too? I'm asking, no, I'm just asking. 'cause seriously.
That is up to you all how you want to write it.
Yeah,
That's up to you how you want to write it. I mean, currently a policy is if a child transfers during the school year, they have the right to stay into the entire, to the end of the school year. To the end of the school year, you cannot force them to leave because they have the right to stay because they are attending there. If the parent
Considering the
leaves that year.
teacher shortage, there are.
It's a good recruiting.
It is a
Just
great
good
recruiting.
incentive.
My thing is to bring you all these things and for you all to decide the pros, cons, areas.
So I like,
There will be 11 in South Cook that will adopt this. No, it's in South Cook, and she just did this
We have
2 weeks
66.
ago. So it's about 60, yeah,
66.
66. And 11 that will be by next year, but others saying that they're interested. But they have to, of course, bring it to their board and have a conversation. And we were just asked to bring it to the board to have the conversation.
so I like the incentive for our teachers because, I mean, although I know they have a great package, right? But I also think that if you put a number around it, that way we can be able to manage it. And then we also, it could be, like I said, incentive to keep them with our district, if that makes sense. But just put a number around it. Don't just say, hey, everybody who got kids, come on over. That's not how we would do that, to me.
Yeah.
I would like to incentivize because I want to keep good teachers. A lot of people, either leave to go work in their district or at their kids' schools too.
So I'll send a survey out tomorrow just to ask who would be. It could be two sentences. I mean, take them 3 minutes to do it, just to find out who's interested. I know for a fact one middle school teacher talked to me about it because she heard about some of the surrounding areas. I mean, it's definitely something you can always put parameters on it, caps, all types of things, but it's a good recruiting incentive. Universities do it all the time.
And we could also use it as a pilot, and if the pilot fails, then.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So, all right, that's it for that one. Keep it moving. Got a couple. But thank you for considering. I'll get that data for you all ASAP. All right. This one is pretty quick. This is just to let you all know. So today we had our life and safety review, if you will, inspection, and overall it went pretty well. At first, that was the discussion that I had with them, and we will get that report. One of the things that we're required to do, and this is a new requirement, started last year, that we have to let you know that we have to do an annual review of our safety measures, so our operations, our plans for safety. So drills, all of those types of things. We have to do a review, but we have to do it with our local police department and fire department and get their feedback on it. And so I was just, my job is to let you all know that will be done. Dr. Lee will be spearheading that because that falls under the purview of his job, and it will be within the next 30 days. And then once that, if they give us some recommendations for improvements, then we have to do those recommendations. Last year, they were fine. They thought our plans were pretty comprehensive and met their standards, and then they were okay with them. So I'm just letting you know that will be happening in the next 30 days. And then if they make any recommendations, I will report that out, and we will make those recommendations. Because, you know, we work with the local fire department and police department for all of our drills and everything like that, and so we're required to do those. So, all right, next. Just a lot of information just to provide you updates. All right. So we're required to do the 5 essentials. And one of the things that the conversations that we have had over the last year and a half was to discuss how are we improving our culture and climate. So because the 5 essentials is only given once a year, and I'm going to connect this to NWEA. So one of the things that you all are requesting is that a little bit more information from the principals on a more frequent basis, kind of an interim in between. They do the testing, we do it beginning of the year, middle of the year, end of the year. And so that's when they were coming out to give you that information so that you can see the growth or throughout the year. But during those intervals, you know, between those 2 dates, if you will, we are working with them, coaching and things like that. So part of one of the things we wanted to do was to talk about how do we improve, I'm going to go back here, how do we improve our culture and climate. One of the things that I want to be, I always caution is we want things to not look good, we actually want things to be good. So it's about skills, dispositions, and beliefs that we want to improve. And so using Catalyze in 3 times a year will improve our culture and climate because there are things that the principals will have to do to improve those things. And so I talked about this before about what does Catalyze measure, and that's what you saw on there. The collective vision, effective systems, the learning culture, inclusive leadership, transformative equity, and trust in community. It is in alignment and connected to how do we improve our 5 essentials, the metrics, but the most important thing is improving the actual culture and climate, not just the metrics. But you need metrics in order to see if the things that you are doing are actually improving. So I'm going to get to those things. We'll get to the data. I talked about this. So these are the cycles. We had the cycle. The next cycle will be in February. We're going to do it a little bit earlier than that, February, and then the final will be in May. So this is our overall results for this survey, which was our first time doing this. And there were 190, almost 200 people who took the survey in all, in our entire district. The hope is that we'll have better rates of response now that everyone understands what this survey is, what it measures, and then how we are working to improve the culture and climate. And so if you can, as you can see, the one that was the highest was 61% of our staff rated positively that we have a trusting community. Our least was transformative equity. We have just started doing that work. So that is typical for it to be low because we have dipped our toe into the equity space and we are working towards that. And so these metrics will definitely improve once everyone starts to understand. So what I want to show you really quickly is every schools and their data. And so the principals, this tells you what this means. And so I won't go through this, the board has this, but what does collective vision mean? These are the questions, I'll just read a couple of, these are the questions that are underneath collective vision. The organizational vision is communicated in a way that is clear and understandable. The organizational vision reflects input from communities we serve. There's a shared sense of responsibility for advancing the organizational vision. The organizational vision is used to guide choices and actions. Professional learning is aligned to the organizational vision. One of the things that's really important as to when you start to look at how do you improve your culture and climate by looking at metrics is it's really important that we're thinking about the disposition and the, I guess you want to say, how everyone in the system is taking responsibility for how we improve the culture. Because it isn't one thing and one person is all the people and all the things. And so each of us, from board members to district office to teachers to staff to students, all have a responsibility, and we have an impact on our school culture. So then we have effective systems, inclusive leadership, learning culture, and then transformative equity, and finally, trust and community. So trust and community was actually one of our highest, and then remember, we did this for the very first time. This is the first time they've ever done this. And one of the questions is, I feel respected, I feel connected to my colleagues, I am confident everyone is good at their job. There is a great deal of collaboration among everyone. People build trust with one another through actions, not just words, and leaders demonstrate care for everyone's well-being. So it's very specific that it shows you, like, these are the things. Then this information tells the principals and us as a school community where are our pain points and what are the things that we need to work on. This is very, very specific. So here are Woodgate's results. Now, the principals are going to talk about this when they come in February, so I won't steal their thunder because they're going to actually talk to you about the things that they have been working on. So one of the things we have done as a team to support them is we have disaggregated this data, we have talked to them about it, and then they have set goals and intentions around improving the areas in which they scored the lowest in. Okay? So this is Woodgate. This is Neil Armstrong. This is Seed and Prairie. And so the overall data that you saw at the beginning is all of this data from each individual school, and once you put it together, it gave us our overall district score. And then we have Maria Yates. And then we have Colin Powell. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier because I think it's really important. If you look at the questions, I need everyone to think about this and how important this is. And this is why we're working with the principals and working with the staff. Everyone has the understanding or belief, and I'm going to challenge everyone in the room because I do not believe this to be the case. It is not accurate. I've been doing this work a long, long time. It is everyone's responsibility when it comes to culture and climate. It is not just administration. It is not just teachers. It's every single person. And so it's really important if you read the questions talk about how do you get along with your colleagues? How do you feel? Do you feel respected? Do you feel these things? It doesn't say, do you feel respected by this person, but in this culture, in these learning and working conditions, do you feel this way? And remember when I shared with you all board the panorama data. The panorama data actually talks about how do the students feel with the relationships that they have with the adults. And so when we measure all of that and we center students' experience, at the core of every single thing we do and every decision that we make, we have to center students first. And then everything is around that. And so then we think about, well, how do we improve this? And so we have worked with the principals. We have a principal meeting on Tuesday where we're going to dig even deeper into this. And then we have talked about, well, what are you going to focus on? And then what will be your, how you're making decisions to address the issues that you're having in your building. And so they will take this again in February and be able to provide, hopefully, some improvement. Yes.
I have a question. So this was given to all staff
Yes, it was given to all staff
in each building?
in the entire district and in the entire, yep. So,
Only reason why I'm asking,
mhm,
because it was a larger number when it was overall, but
mhm.
when you go down to each building, it's like 38 responses.
That's right.
So this is not even a full.
That's right. So everyone didn't take it. And that's, that happens with surveys. You send the survey out, those who want to take it, those who don't. And it was open for like 2 weeks, and we kept reminding people to take it. But in their defense, it was the first time that we gave it. You see what I'm saying? And when you're trying to build trust, part of it is how do we remove barriers, and how do we address things that people had issues with in the past? Because in the past, people had issues with, is it anonymous? Will I be retaliated against if I, and these are things, and we had a staff meeting earlier, and I always tell people I like to poke the bear, meaning I want to call a thing a thing. If we know that people have felt or had distrust because they think that if I'm honest, I will be retaliated against, we have to be very clear with them that we cannot change something if you're not willing to be honest. You see? And so we know that this was their first time doing it. We think that we have built up enough trust in, well, the funniest thing is that our highest was trust in community, so that was really interesting to me. So we know that it will improve, but we have to be able to name what it actually is in order to improve it. But it's a change of mindsets, it's a change of disposition as well, that culture and climate isn't one person, it's everyone. And so everyone has to take responsibility for that.
So Dr. Brunson?
Yes,
did
ma'am.
we administer the survey, or was it administered by an outside source?
Outside source, the National Equity Project that we're working with. Yes, ma'am.
So it was administered outside, and were the staff, all of the staff was aware that it was administered on the outside? And
Yes.
And that it was completely anonymous?
Yes, ma'am. So they needed, okay, because I know a question you're about to ask. So let me answer this question. The equity team went to every single school, and we presented this and explained to them how this would be administered. Yes, when it came to your email, you had to put your email in, but guess what? I don't even know, and I have the highest rights of whose questions were whose, because all we have are demographics. We don't have who took it. We just have numbers. And if you decide to tell us you were a female and you were African American or a male white, we have that. So we have those type of demographics, but we have no idea who the people are. No, I understand. Mm-hmm. But let me tell you why, though. Because it's attached to our school district. So it goes straight to your email. You got to put your email in. It's like a login. It's like a login. So it is specific to if we don't have that, we have to have some sort of safety measures, because otherwise somebody outside can take it, and then that messes with the integrity of it. But to your point, that was the reason why I repeated what I said 3 times. Part of what we're dealing with is people not trusting. We're working on that, you all. And so everyone has to be on the same page, saying that we're actually using this information to be better. And to your point, what you were about to say, I know you all well enough at this point, Cherie, is why is that a bad thing that we know who said it? We're not, this is part of the thing, is we are not retaliating against people. I have no problem with courageous and difficult conversations, and we're working on making sure that everyone is okay with that. Because we're not going to grow if we're only going to be comfortable. You only grow when things are uncomfortable. So we are utilizing it with integrity, respect, and care so that we can be better. And this is where we are.
Another question.
Yes, ma'am.
So I noticed that you have everything where the person would answer the question and they would say at what degree they agreed
Yes.
or
Mhm.
disagreed. Was there any point on this survey for just, this is my concern, that falls outside of that? Or did they have an opportunity to just write a concern?
They did. I can, for the sake of time and staying within the parameters of the 5 to 7 that you all requested, I can provide those to you, though. When you set parameters, you ask for them. You ask me to cut things down. That's what I do. Some gotta die. But I will tell you this: there were only a few responses. Nothing surprising. I want to tell you all this. I've been here a year and a half. Nothing surprises me now. I can almost tell you who said it without them if they ever wrote their name, because you're around enough, you know who says what and how they feel about everything. And also, people they're not scared to tell me anything on the side or whatever, even if whatever it is. But part of that is one of our core values is transparency. So we want to be transparent. We're not going to get better if we don't want to have the uncomfortable conversation.
I have 2 more questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who was a part of the team that formulated the questions? And then when I requested the survey, I wanted it to include everyone, to include this Board of Education, everybody in the survey, so that we would all know the culture and the climate as it related to every tier within the district.
So when it all came down to district, so this one doesn't necessarily do that. Unless we actually create it, which we asked for to have this be outside, there aren't many that do that. If the board wants to be surveyed, we can create something for that.
I don't know if the board did want to be surveyed.
I don't. That's what I'm saying.
I know
I
it
don't
was
know.
my suggestion, and the board would
Yes.
have to vote on it. But if we're going to look at culture and climate, to me, culture and climate is all things District 159, and we're part of that.
Yeah. So this one in particular was about, these are the National Equity Project and University of Chicago. So these are the organizations that collaborated to create this survey, this particular survey. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're very welcome. Are there any other questions
Yeah,
regarding
so
this?
this is like the starting point.
Yes.
You know, do we have ideal targets in place for improvement for the
Yes.
for the percentages?
So I'm just going to go back to, when you have time, if you look at you will read these, each one of these headings have the questions that tell us how they feel about effective systems. So if you go to, let's go to Maria Yates. They have new administration and everything. So each of the principals, we went through, and we're actually going to be meeting with them Tuesday to get a gauge of where they are. Looked at this and then set an intention, meaning they said, okay, we need to focus on inclusive leadership, and that is where we need to put our efforts to grow, to improve. Anyone who knows anything about statistics know that you can't work on everything. So you got to look at it and say, this is our lowest, or sometimes if you choose one, it's going to have a positive impact on the others. So each school has now their own goals related to their own schools. Now as a district, because we have the district data, we have, right now, Trust and Community was the highest one, but we have the learning culture and transformative equity. Transformative equity was low for everyone because it's new. And so these are we're working with the principals so that they can improve their metrics, which will then improve our metrics. So that's how we're working on that.
No, that makes sense. And then, this all ties back into like the template, right?
Yes.
So as the principals are going through that's what I was saying, more frequent updates on a regular basis, just so we can keep track on the progress on these
Mhm.
steps. So it all ties back together. It's just good to have a starting point.
I think the only issue, if I may, is that we only give it 3 times. So in between, there's nothing in between except for we can talk about what they're doing,
Right,
the strategies.
That's kind of what
The
I'm
strategies.
getting at. Like,
We can talk
even
about
though
the strategies.
we won't get the results of the
Yes.
survey, but they're still going to be working
Yes.
towards improving these numbers.
Yep.
All
So
school year, right?
the principals are coming February 7th to
Yeah.
give you an update on their climate culture, data, SEL, and so they're going to give you information on that. They will talk about, because the students are going to do their panorama, and they're going to do their NWEA. So there actually will be fresh data points, and then they'll be able to tell you about the strategies that they've been engaging in between this time.
Is it any way that we can get the results back sooner? Because when was this one administered?
October, late, so no, I would say November. There was the intention to talk about this at the last committee of the whole, so you would have had them earlier. But I did provide this in the boardogram, so you did get the data before today. You have it. So, but it's kind of hard to explain it. It's better to explain it, but I did provide the data.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they finish it, you'll get the data, and then, of course, we'll have a conversation about the comparison and areas of growth and areas that we've met or are
And is
approaching.
that data shared in each building, not just with the admin level? Is it?
Yes. So one of the things, so to your point, Ken, about strategies, one of the things that they were charged with was having the conversation with their staff. One of our core values, of course, is integrity, transparency, and collaboration. Those are the 3 that they were charged with going back to their buildings, having a conversation and looking at the data, and then co-creating the strategies for improvement. So it doesn't become just the principals trying to improve, it's the school community that is charged with and that's one of the things there is the inclusive leadership that ties into that. Like, how are you working on including everyone with improving the culture? So that's one of the that's a lot of the different strategies. Each building, depending on where they are, like Maria Yates, they're a new staff, right? New leadership team. You have Neil Armstrong, who is an established team. You have Woodgate, this is their 2nd year. So sometimes we have to differentiate depending on where they are, how much help they need, how much support they need.
I got another question, right?
Sure.
So just looking at the variance in the different schools, some things seem like they could be standardized, like, for example, effective systems, right? If one building is doing that well, that could be an opportunity to kind of adopt that among other buildings, like best practices, what they're doing that's working, and instead of a situation where a principal or leader might feel like they have to reinvent the wheel. So just looking for ways to, make things efficient in terms of, those strategies, and that's just something that came to mind.
So I'm glad you said that. At our last principal meeting, what they were all asked to do was to bring an artifact. And so that one of the things in all transparency that our district was struggling with is schools were working in silos. And so what we have been doing is having them, one of the things that they have all been charged with, the principals and the assistant principals, is what I like to call mi casa su casa. They have all been required to go to their another school of their colleagues to see one of their meetings, a PLC meeting, a staff meeting, or something, so that now they're sharing their knowledge with each other. They had to come and bring an artifact from something that is something that they do really well, or that they have found to be very effective, and they are sharing those things. And so now they're starting to work really, really well together, leaning on each other, and now there isn't this competition, there isn't this hoarding of information. We're a school community and working together. So what you just said is exactly what some of the strategies we've been working on. So. And we will keep you posted on our success, because that's the only thing we're gonna have. So, all right. I think that's it for this. All right, let's come to the next one. You're gonna get all the Dr. Brunson you can stand tonight, whether you like it or not. All right. We're just very busy, and I just want to make sure. So I may have Ms. Owens chime in on this one, and Ms. Friday, because this is something that we're working on collaboratively. So we have a proposal for updating the LRCs. So you know Seton Prairie, we are going to be doing their, the state-of-the-art media lab. Look at the beautiful rendering. But at the other 3 elementary schools, we need to update those LRCs. So we off to a good start. All right, I just put in here some, you know, what this, you know, the rationale for learner-centered space. Offers numerous advantages, and these are some of the advantages. This happens to be one of the things that I absolutely love. When you see that it says Spaces for Learning, that is actually an article that I wrote. I put it in there. I wrote this article before I actually came here. I wrote it, and it's regarding the reason why we have and the need for this, because I've done it at my previous districts. And long before we were doing those things as far as innovation, but I put that article in there, and it's funny is they had to change the tagline at the end because I wasn't the superintendent here. I wrote it in like May, June, and it wasn't published until October. So feel free to read that. It's actually pretty good, I think. So it, if I should say so myself, but it's a national publication, and I actually enjoy writing, and I sleep, eat, and breathe this work. So these are all of the advantages to providing these spaces for our students. So how are we going to pay for it, you ask? This is the question that you always ask. So here you go. Because I know everybody so well, don't you worry, I got you. But so Mrs. Friday, would you like to tell the great people that we have what? Come on now. Set aside that we have to spend by September 2024. Let's do it. We have to. So because that's all of the, you know, all these deadlines and things like that. So we are going to be working with school teams to create a vision as students, admin. We want your input about what you want these spaces to look like, and then we're going to get started and getting that work done this summer. But this is the money that we've got.
Dr. Brunson.
Well, our architect of record is Tria. So
We're kind of,
I will have Mrs. Owens take that part.
I'm concerned about the time frame, because we have less than a year. It has to draw out the got to do the drawings, you got to put it out for bid, then we got to order the stuff, and then we have to get it installed. Are we going to make it?
Yes, as long as you start it, you're good.
Yes. Yes. So when we do the expenditure reports, they're going to look for the obligated funds. But if we don't, if the board doesn't say, yep, we want this to happen, we can't even start moving the needle on it, even if the project is not complete until like September or even October. Those spaces, we actually can, that month of August, that first month, students are usually in the LRC. So we can use that beginning of the school year as extended time to get the work finished. But we do have great ideas to make this absolutely fantastic, and it would align so that way we are providing equitable spaces for the LRCs, considering we're getting this addition, and it is going to be smoking hot.
And will you have something to present by next week?
The only thing we're gonna have is that we are asking for your approval to get started, because we can't even
'Cause we-
get started
yeah.
with any of that.
But it's
Esther?
Yeah, no, just saying yes and then go. You know, yes.
Because there could be, we don't know all of the bumps that we may come into contact with, considering we haven't even pushed this out. This is just conversation to get the board engaged, to see if this is something that we want to do, and if so, then we'll get a move on it and start engaging the architect to see what can we do and how fast can we do it, and start working on getting that done. Hopefully, we would have some information for the board in February, but it may just be the documents of going out to bid and the estimated cost that we anticipated being. What I took a look at to gauge this number was the cost to furnish the STEM and admin building. Altogether, it was about $600,000 for this entire building, including, a lot of everything that we're using. And so I wanted to make sure that we had enough money to at least start with. I don't foresee it really being more unless there's some structural things that we really need to take care of, but I won't know that until I can engage an architectural company to say, hey, these are the things that we want to do. What is it looking like? Yes, so that's already taken care of. Considering this would be next year's budget, the board can decide how much, in addition to this $500,000, the board is willing to contribute to make sure that this is able to happen.
So furniture, yes, yes, and so that was part of the conversation that we wanted to have as far as, flexible seating and things like that, furniture for holding hot fire. Yep. So that's why we are saying that we have 500 to start as a set aside, and if we need to, spend money to get some new furniture there, for sure. Yes. Furniture? No, everything else, yes. Yes. So, I just put some pictures in here of things that could happen, just some beautiful stuff. Look, ooh. I'm supposed to say ooh right now.
Kind of like our flooring. That's kind of like our.
But I'm just saying, these are some spaces. See, there we go. I knew I would get some. Yes, there we go. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Nice and bright. Ooh, Hey.
Read.
All right, everybody. We got to stay alive. We're almost done. Man, you look at the little kids. Look at the little kids learning and reading. Look at the little brown boy. Look at him. Good to learn on, brother. All right, and then we got. And this is an actual school. We see the different little spaces and stuff like that. So this is a big one, but this is just to let you know, so to give you a feeling of what I mean by flexible seating. So little spaces, different areas, reading, working spaces, and things like that. And so that's just some of the things. But we will be working with each principal, the students, and the staff to create what they would like to have for their spaces, because Maria Yates has the largest footprint. Neil Armstrong has this small area here, but then they have the area behind there where the computers used to be, and that's a mess back there. And so it's very promising. We will keep you posted on all of this stuff, and say yes, and we will make it happen and keep you all. But the goal is to have equity throughout our districts. When it starts with the LRC, Then after that, the next year, we're going to be looking at all of the classrooms and updating those.
And potentially chairs for Colin Powell, because when we have our special events, some of the black chairs that we put down, aren't those original to the building?
Yes.
They're original,
So-
like 17, 18 years old?
So there
They
are
look
some
like it.
furniture needs that we have, absolutely. Yep. All right, Eddie, all right, we got Mrs. Friday coming up. All right.
Okay, let me get started. First of all, thank you guys for giving me the opportunity to share what we have been doing for the last few months related to social media. First, I'd like to start by defining what the National School Public Relations Association defined as public relations and communication. And as you see here, it is a planned and systematic management function to help improve the programs and services of an education system, such as us. It is a comprehensive two-way communication process involving internal and external publics, with the goal of stimulating a better understanding of our roles, objectives, accomplishments, and needs of an organization. The program assists in interpreting the attitudes, identity, and help shape policies and procedures in the public interest and carry on involvement and information activities which earn public understanding, support, and I should add trust. So in anything we do related to public relations or communication, we follow what we call an RPI. RPI is the acronym for Research, Plan, Implement, and Evaluate. And so in anything that I do regards to public relations, newsletters, anything related to our department, this is the process that we follow. Strategic goal plan, goal number 2 is to establish ongoing and transparent communication with all stakeholders. And so aligned with that, we have identified 2 objectives. Utilize social media to showcase the school district, our students, and our staff, and to maintain up-to-date information, accurate information about on our district's website. I talked about our RPI process. One of the things we do is called planning, and in our planning process, we identify strategies. So these are the strategies that we identified. Establish a social media presence and post on social media platforms early and often. Secondly, maintain clear messaging. Thirdly, communicate strengths and accomplishments of our school district. Establish and utilize input from our communication committee to maximize our social media efforts. So this is a group effort, and we've been engaging in our social media for the last 3 months. And lastly, utilize the Buffer social media software platform or application to connect each social media platform and account to provide analytics. So what Buffer does is if I were to post on Facebook, it would also post on all our other platforms. So that's going to be very effective and time consuming and save time, I should say. So we're going to start with our first social media platform, which is our busiest. Obviously, it is Facebook. We started this platform in December of 2019. However, you know what happened in 2020, in the spring of 2020, COVID. So the platform was very beneficial because it allowed us the opportunity to interact with our community, to interact with our families, our students, anyone that wanted to know anything that was going on in our school district, from e-learning to remote learning. It was very beneficial. However, It didn't give us the opportunity to show or highlight our students, our scholars, and that's something we really want to do. So when you look at Facebook, our research tells us that we should look at our impressions, our reach, which is the same thing as our view, and our post engagement. Now, impression is merely the number of times a post appeared on a screen. I'm not so concerned about that. I'm more concerned about our reach, which means the number of people who actually saw your post at least one time, and our post engagement, which means our reactions. People are sharing or commenting and liking. So those are the things I'm most concerned about. Okay, so let's look at the month of October. For October, we reached, or I can say our posts were viewed 34,967 times, which was an increase of over 16,000 from the month of September. Now, we set a goal to increase that number by 10%, and we exceeded that by 6,614. We had 3,156 post engagements, 15 new page likes, and 29 new followers. Now, what was different about October? October was the beginning of our social media campaign. So we really worked hard to get our story. I always say we tell our story. We worked really hard to tell our story. But it was also anti-bullying month. And it was also our initiative, Start with Hello. So what did we do? We took it to the schools. We had videos that we recorded recorded by staff and students, and we posted them. And I'm gonna tell you, Facebook, they love to see videos. I mean, that's a real big thing. And so we were able to be very successful because of that social media campaign. That kicked off social media for our school district this year. And then we go to November. Now, keep in mind, with November, our data is only through the 20th because we went on fall break, right? Okay, so for November, we reached 31,838. There were 2,370 post engagement. So that means they either liked it, shared it, comment on it. So we were happy about that. We had 11 new page likes, and 10 new followers. Now we're going to look at December. Again, another short month. We only went through the 22nd of the month. However, we still reached 26,856. We almost had 3,000 post engagement, 2 new page likes, and 4 new followers. So we're still growing on social media, on Facebook, but we're really pleased because we have exceeded our expectations. Now I'm going to talk about our digital newsletter. We established, I talked to Dr. Bronson, and she said, I want you to establish a digital newsletter, and I wanted to go to our employees, and we talked, and I said, well, we also want to send it out to the community if we can. We want to engage our parents, right, and our leaders in the communities, and we want to encourage them to share it. That was important to us. So we named it Thrive in 159. If you guys know everything we say, we said Thrive in 159, right? So we named it Thrive in 159. It's normally published twice a month. It is emailed to parents, employees. You guys should be getting it, our board members, and to community members, or community, I should say, leaders. So our first one in October, we had 10,861 impressions. I'm not so concerned about that. It just means the number of times it appeared on the screen, but I'm really impressed with the fact that it was seen 7,803 times. We had 81 post engagements, and that's the one October the 13th. Then we're going to look at October 27th, where we had 2,782 impressions. It was seen 1,847 times and 74 post engagements. So why the big difference? Well, the first part of October, we kicked off that campaign. And so people saw the videos and they were happy and engaged. And so that's where you see the difference. In addition, combined both newsletters were viewed 3,320 times via direct email. So that can be our employees or others who are getting the email. So we were really pleased with that. Total for the month, 12,970. Let's move over to November. Now keep in mind, we had fall recess, so we only published one newsletter during December. It was seen 4,188 times. Let me see, what else do I want to go? It had 87 post engagements on Facebook, and the newsletter was also viewed via direct email. So that means I'm emailing it to you guys, and you guys are looking at it, or to our employees. It was viewed also 1,546 times for a total of 5,734 views. December. Keep in mind, December is a short month, but I still published twice because we had some really good things going on in December, including the ceremony that we had at Seton Prairie. So our first, December 1st was our first edition, and it was viewed 2,470 times. Okay, an additional 1,563 were viewed through direct email. Then we look at the 19th, and that was right after we had the event at Seton Prairie. That was viewed 3,221 times. But then through direct mail, 2,463 for a total of 9,717. So as you see, videos, because we did a video for that, they love videos. Everyone loves videos.
I had a question.
Yes.
So with the newsletter, is it being sent to people outside of an email list? Like, how is it? I'm just like, how many people are on the email list compared to, I guess, the views it's getting? I'm kind of having a disconnect there.
Okay.
Right.
So the newsletter is sent to all our employees,
Okay.
leaders in the communities, organizations that we partner with, but it's also on Facebook. So that's why you're going to see a large number, because there's a large reach on Facebook.
So it's not just sent to the distribution list. It's shared out outside of that, right?
It is shared outside of it, right? When you look at Facebook, anyone that follows us on Facebook has access to seeing it. Now, of course, it's going to go to all of our employees. We have a database of people that we've worked with throughout the year or for years. You know, it's going to go to the Village of Matheson and their leadership. It's going to go to the Village of Richton Park. We're beginning to interact with the Village of Tinley Park because they're part of our school district as well. And the database is always updated as more people engage.
Okay.
Okay? All right. Our next we're going to go to our district website. Okay. And so I work with Mr. Short a lot on the website. Mr. Short actually updates the website and provides us with the information. So when we first took this path of social media and reaching out to our community and keeping our statistics, and we were unable to capture the data for the website for the month of October. However, for the month of November, we had 3,200 visits. For the month of December, we had 5,700 visits. Our most viewed pages are the main page, HR, Meet the Board, Let's Talk, and 1 month we also had the events page was one of the top ones that were viewed. Now the next three, TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, they are very new to us, right? We started working on this, a couple of months ago. But for the month of October, you can see with TikTok, we had 4,300 views. The highest one was our anti-bullying and the skip challenge. I don't know if y'all saw that skip challenge. That was cute, right? So that was really cute. That's one of my favorites. But that anti-bullying, that was also a nice video. Okay, then in November, we had our video views was 1,327. December, Last month was our biggest month. We had 4,318. There were three videos, and they all were related to Genius Week. And you guys remember when we had Genius Week. And so that was a great opportunity for us to highlight our STEM Center and to highlight those who had come to share and be a part of that whole Genius Week for us. Twitter, we did not capture data for the month of October. November, we had 20 impressions, tweet impressions. That means it appears on the screen. And we had 14 new followers in December. We know this is an area that we need to work on, and so we are going to be working on that. As far as Instagram, we reached 58 accounts in October. We had 37 followers, and our video was viewed 387 times. In November, we reached 12 accounts. For some reason, things were slow, and we had 37 followers. Okay, and then for the month of December, we reached 109 accounts, of which 27 were followers and 82 were non-followers. Now, in the month of December is when we had Genius Week too. And so I know that that was posted quite a bit during that month. Now, that's what I had for my slideshow, but I did want to share some other things with you guys. So going forward, what we plan to do going forward is to utilize our social media platforms, continue to utilize them, but to increase the frequency of Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram. We also plan to continue to analyze our social media platforms on a monthly basis and make those necessary changes. And we are going to establish, and I'm excited about this one, establish a social media ambassadors club. And that's going to be made up of students who will actually do videos for us, because they love doing videos anyway, right? And we're going to incentivize them. They're going to do videos, and their videos will be posted on our social media platforms. We are still in the planning stage for that, but that's one of the things we want to do. In short, our social media goal, is to create a central and engaged social media presence to meet the common goal of effective communication with all of our stakeholders. Does anyone have any questions? No questions? I know you
I
have
do.
questions.
I have one.
I knew you was going to have a question. You hear me say, you better ask me something. Go ahead.
So we're only reaching our ESD 159 family, not all of the ESD 159 community?
Yeah,
Because we send it to everyone, whether they have kids in the district or not?
when you say it, what it are we referring to?
I'm sorry, the twice monthly newsletter.
The digital newsletter,
Yes.
Thriving 159.
See, now
send
that
it
we
out
don't have
to
to
our
pay money
community?
to send it out via the mail, we should be able to reach everybody, right?
Okay, so that's something to consider. We do send it out to our district community, and we also encourage them to share it. I send it out to business owners that I know. I send it out to municipal leaders that I know, those that we have contracted with for whatever. We send it out, but I don't have a database where I can send it out because it's digital, right?
It is digital, so I guess my question was, how could we reach more of the community? How do we grow that database beyond District 159?
That's a good question, and that's something to consider. No, it's not. It's posted on our website. No. Let me take a step back. It's posted on our Facebook page. And I'm going to tell you how many times it's been viewed.
So I think that we could probably post it on those places so people know to go to our webpage. Because not too many people, especially if they don't have kids in the district, are just going to say, let me go to District 159 and find out if they have TikTok or Facebook or, you know what I'm saying?
The most popular social media that we have right now is Facebook, in all honesty. And so I post a lot. If y'all, I know you respond, and somebody else, Mr. Short is always responding. But the digital newsletter is going to go to our Facebook page. Now, we can consider doing some other things to get it out, but sometimes it's repetitive because those things that you see, sometimes you're going to see in that quarterly newsletter, which goes out to the whole district.
Okay, so that's where I thought it was in lieu of the
No,
quarterly.
we still do
It's
the
in
quarterly.
addition to that?
Yes. No, it's not in lieu of. We still do our quarterly, which is mailed. In addition to that being mailed, starting our next one, it's going to be emailed as well, because we get a digital copy of that as well.
That's a great place to let them know that we have all that.
That we have
So I think that, 159 as well as Richmond Park, they should have it on their webpage, because we are their school district. I mean, I think I don't know if we're the only ones doing it, because I get Southland and all of their, I don't know why it comes to my house when I'm not in their district, but I get their newsletters, I get all of that.
You get it because you're in that mail route. But
You are in it.
what will happen, but what is going to happen, we have reached out to the Village of Madison and the Village of Richmond Park, and we're going to reach also out, because we do have students in Tinley Park, and we are going to ask that they place things on their website. For example, I've already partnered with the Village of Richmond Park and Madison, so I do a SMORE newsletter. This is through the SMORE platform, and if you look at it, you will see that I have posted upcoming events for the Village of Madison and upcoming events for the Village of Richmond Park, because we are partners at the end of the day. And so now I've started engaging them with in the same manner. I'd like you all to post on your websites. Yes, Ms. Johnson.
I would like to see, at least on our district webpage and then school web pages, just an archive of the newsletters, so then that way, if somebody's coming, they can see, click at some point and see the past issues that are out there.
That's a good idea.
When it goes, if you don't see it.
That's a great idea. And especially since now we're talking about the electronic one, but the ones that are sent in by mail as well, I get a digital copy of those. So we can post those as well. That's a good idea. Good idea. Anybody else?
Yeah, I got one more thing.
Yes.
Something I brought up a while ago, but I don't see LinkedIn on here. Is there any reason why we're not using that as a platform as well?
Well, we did our research. Thanks for the question. We did our research, and we wanted to identify the social media platforms that were used most and more beneficial to schools for public relations and communication. Now, we do have a LinkedIn platform, and we use that for HR purposes. But when we wanted to identify through our research, going through the RPI process, LinkedIn did not rank as related in relations to public schools, social media.
But I think I don't know, I have to push back on that, because if we're thinking of LinkedIn as a potential recruiting tool, like having what the district is doing on LinkedIn is a good look for potential, teachers that want to come.
That's a good point.
Right, and last time I tried to just say I'm a board member on LinkedIn for District 159, the page wasn't updated. So that's why I'm bringing it up again, because for the existing employees, I think it also looks more professional if it's current and up to date, right? And there's not multiple pages. And so that's why I'm raising that again, because I think it is a valuable platform for professionals, right? Like each of these should have a target audience, like TikTok, of course, kids, right? LinkedIn, professionals, adults, parents.
Right.
Facebook is pretty much everybody. So that's why I'm bringing it up. I think that's a platform that we should, especially from an HR perspective, it makes sense.
And that's a good point, and we will consider that. I know that Mr. Butler has utilized it for recruiting purposes, and so you're right. It would be good if they're going to look at our LinkedIn to see some of the good things that we're doing. Right.
Yeah, and some school districts.
Yeah.
Some school districts have all the job listings right there on LinkedIn. So I think it's a missed opportunity.
Hold on. You want to respond to that? Hold on.
So we're still in the process of separating the old account. The LinkedIn account was so old, and so the issue is that that we're running into right now is when we're trying to post it and people are clicking on the different jobs. It's not connecting to our original account. So we're working with LinkedIn support to get that updated. So it's not that we stopped or we're not going to continue to emphasize LinkedIn as a channel for human resources and recruitment, but we're working on it because the account is so old and the people who are here no longer have the access to it. So,
Okay.
And that's a good point, because even with our Twitter account and our Instagram, there were other accounts. And so we had to go through a long process in order to establish other accounts. So
I mean,
that's a
if
good
it's,
point.
I mean, if it's too much with the support, we could create a new one, right? We can create a new one, tell all the staff, hey, here's the official LinkedIn page, update your profile. So that's another option.
Okay, that's a good idea, and we'll work on that. Any other questions or comments? Thank you. Yes.
When it comes to that, did they give you a timeline of how long it takes to set up a LinkedIn page or any of that?
That's Mr. Butler's working on that. Do you have a time frame?
And then as far as the social media pages, do we have any incentives going out for the kids? Like, hey, get someone to sign up for.
Give them a pop card with all of our hashtags on it.
Yeah.
We don't have, but that's something to think about. And these are the things that our communication committee talk about. And that's where the the ambassadors will come in place. That's also where our social media campaign came into place, how that came into place, because we talked about how can we highlight what we're doing in the school district to meet all age groups. 'Cause everyone's not going to look at Facebook, right? Although most people do have, that is number one, but everyone's not going to look at Facebook. And we know that our average person that look at Facebook, 30% are men, 70% are women, okay? And the age, you have like 18% between the ages of 34 and 45, and from 45 to 55, I think, you have like 25%. So we know what the data says. We know that we have less than 10% that are under the age of 25. So we know that, so we do know that we need to look at other avenues of reaching. So these are good ideas, and we will discuss it with our communication committee. So what we did when our children, or I call them scholars, they did a video of Dr. Bronson and a little bit ago, and it was on social media. It was one of our most liked ones. We talked about it. So we do know that we need to engage our children, which is why we're going to have the ambassadors, because they like cameras and things like that anyway. But you're right, we are going to engage our kids. And initially we were thinking at the middle school level, but we realized these young kids in elementary school,
Absolutely.
they're into it as well. Yes. Yes, we did have that going on a few years ago. That's something we can consider. And that's why, remember, my department is pretty small. And so that's why it was important to bring other people involved, to get other people involved and engage. And so we have a team, and we work together. And so I'm working on our communication plan, which will be prepared for in draft maybe by the end of next week. And so that will highlight exactly what we're going to do in relations to all communication and public relation efforts, which does obviously include social media. Okay, any other questions?
Well, it's kind of for you, but probably mostly for Dr. Brunson. So in the Colin Powell Middle School, in the media Center, we had talked about the students doing the morning announcements and things like that, and that could have just been available to upload to LinkedIn. Are they not doing that?
So they just got trained on all of it, and so it's being utilized in the applied tech and with Miss Dancy in the STEM center. I mean, the STEM, I forgot what the STEM tech room. And so they are utilizing it, and we were just there, yesterday. And so Mrs. Friday will be connecting with them so that we can start using some of those in whatever they're creating, so.
But last month, I think it was in November, not last month, two of the students, well, one student in particular, did an awesome interview of Dr. Bronson, and it was posted. Yeah, and it was posted, and that was one of my highest viewed.
I'm sure.
So we know that they love to see kids.
Children will bring out the community. If you use the children in all of this, they will bring the community. Our community wants to know what our children are doing for $21,000 each.
They can do it. Mm-hmm. Our kids can do it. So we'll work on those things. Any other questions? Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you so much.
Good evening, Board of Education and ESD 159 family. I am going to be as brief as I possibly can. Okay. I don't have a whole lot. I do know that there's an update that the board wanted, and that is regarding the storage unit. So I'll give that brief update. We have contacted 4 companies to go in. First, we had to contact the storage unit, and they stated that we are allowed to bring whomever we need to decontaminate. We called a couple of companies. 4 Environmental told us no, it's an environmental marketing service. They handle chemicals and things like that. So we're like, hey, can you handle this? And they said, no, they don't do that. Pro Shred said, no, they'll shred, but they don't. If there's any mold, we have to take care of that on our own. We contact Serve Pro. They first said no, and then they said, yes, we can do it, but we don't shred. So now we have to work with 2 companies, one to decontaminate and the other to come out and shred. So it's a process, but we're getting there. We're also reaching out to TEM Environmental to see if maybe they can do both. But at this point, we only have 1 company willing to do the decontamination and the other company willing to do the shredding after decontamination. So that's where we are with that, working on getting a date for them to actually come out. And I'll update if they can give us something by next week before the board meeting. I'll update you as well regarding that. As far as tonight, 3 main focus topics: food service contract, bid versus the RFP process, playground fencing, and transportation. To bid or not to bid. Food service bid. So there are some issues that Illinois has, complained about for a while. And finally, the state said, okay, let's take a look at it. So thank you to all those that go to Springfield and lobby. But the issues were that districts were struggling to receive adequate number of quality, competitive, and qualified responsible bids. And, it's huge with the quality of the food products versus service. And so under the old bid process, the focus was the service and the price. I was just going to get there. It was the service and the lowest responsible bidder. And so if there were some issues, you can say, okay, well, their service, they're not providing adequate service. And you can kind of say, hey, so can we not? But it was huge with those being the part of the criteria. Then there was lacks of flexibility in using that criteria. We also dealt with the fact that Illinois and New York were the last 2 states to be under just the bid process. And so last year was the first year that Illinois decided we're going to implement a new way to request for proposals. And so the other issue is, that lowest cost was not as effective when it comes to what are our children actually being fed. And then you weren't able to try the food before you buy the food because that had nothing to do with whether you could contract them for services. So some of the solutions this new process allows districts to actually state the requirements and preferences for our food service program. It also allows for site visits, taste testings. You can score these different criteria. And then you can do all this before awarding the contract. So you don't have to get into the contract and decide, hey, we don't even like the food. You can also evaluate proposal on different topics, and you can include more people at the table in making these decisions before we go out to contract. The RFP was introduced to improve quality, and as you see the House bill that it is governed by. The food service IFB is the invitation for formal bid. It was a fixed price per meal. That was the end. The bid criteria was pass or fail. And then because it's a fixed meal price, the lowest responsible bidder was trying to seek the smallest number, which is kind of how we are where we are in our contract, because the goal was to get that lowest bid. And we see that that's not as effective for what we're actually looking for. And then the lowest, most responsible bidder is almost always recommended. But then again, like I said, there are some things that we were able to kind of look at. When I first got to the district, there was a different company, and that vendor didn't provide the services as needed, but we had documentation to prove that they actually didn't provide the services after being asked to, in writing, to make changes. And therefore, we were able to discard, that bid. As far as the RFP, it's a request for a proposal. There's two options. You can choose a fixed price per meal or cost reimbursable plus a fixed fee. That fixed fee is pretty much, and I'll go through, the fixed meal price option is a fixed price for the contract total, and you can negotiate with your vendors. But the cost reimbursable option, the vendor charges a fee for their service, and then every other expense, every other revenue, the profit, the loss, it all belongs solely to the district directly. Vendor submits a monthly bill to the district, which is different from what we've done in the past. And the district then takes care of processing payment. It also allows for ultimate flexibility. And again, we can negotiate with our vendors and ask for a financial guarantee in some of these areas so that we can make sure that we have a good deal on top of making sure that there's not excessive charges and they're not just going to pick out the most expensive just because. Evaluation criteria is a scoring system. So they give us, there's a certain amount of points that the state has set we have to follow. But they give us 35 points that we can align. We can have those points allocated the way we want as a district. If we wanted to put 10 of those points towards the quality of the food, the taste of the food, we could do that. But the more things we add to our criteria, we spread those points out. And so we as a district would decide how we want that criteria to be laid out using those 35 points. These other criteria is, like I stated, the food quality, which is the taste, customer service, safety, sanitation, cleanliness, and the negotiating. So let me go back. So what I am seeking from the board is that we move in the direction to go out for a request for proposal instead of using the old format of bidding our food service contract. Why am I asking this? Well, this year we have to go out to bid. We have to go out for a new contract because in prior years when we originally contracted our current vendor, they were the lowest, most responsible bidder. So low that when the market took a turn and supply chain hit us really hard, we ran into issues with not being able to get product, and then the company had to deal with CPI increasing, and they had to pay that cost because when you're in a fixed price per meal, there was nothing they could do. And so they requested an increase because it caused them to lose money. And the only way to do that, to give them the increase that they needed to stay in business with our district, was to increase it high and go through what we consider a non-competitive contract. And that means per that contract, you must go out to bid the following year. So we didn't have an option to renew for this year. So I am asking the board that we move forward with the request for a proposal instead of the invitation to formal bid.
And when you send that proposal out, are you sending it out with both options, the fixed meal price and the cost reimbursable, or are you recommending one of the two?
Recommending one of the two. So the fixed price, what we could do if the board would like is to request that they provide us their cost for both. Or we can decide that we want to just go with the cost reimbursable option. The only portion that, alarms me with the cost reimbursable option is the revenue and expenditures and the profit and loss belonging to the district where we contract with a new company and say it's a great company and they're doing everything well. We won't really know until we get into that contract how well they actually perform under this new RFP. Again, this RFP is new, and so my first mind is wanting to go towards the fixed price with or contract total. But should the board decide that we want to try the cost reimbursable option, that is available to us as well.
But the cost reimbursable option, how are we going to be able to have a budget, know the budget, stay within the budget? Is that doable?
Yeah, because that's my question. If I guess we weren't having a problem with the current company and the food and things, and then we're switching. Do they get the option to say, okay, we want to use them for our RFP because we don't have any complaints with them?
So regardless of how many complaints you have or not have, we are in a non-competitive emergency contract. Does not matter. We have to go out for
No,
bid.
I'm saying, no, I get that. But I'm saying if we were to vote and say we want to move to the RFP, are we able to bring a contract to our current and say,
Oh, yes.
hey,
Everyone has access.
without having to go to everybody, we can still just go to who we have and say,
No, we have to submit. You still have to push this out and request for proposals for as many, and you
I'm
want to
talking
go
about
for as
with
many.
the other option. We still have to put it out there for everybody.
No matter which option we go with,
Okay.
it's open. It's open to the public.
Okay.
Yeah, they can be, and they can decide that they don't want to be a part of it. But it is open to all vendors. And we set our criteria with the RFP versus the state sets the criteria in the bid process. That's the major difference. We have more flexibility to include what we desire for our students.
Do we have any surrounding districts that are, you said it's new, so do we have any surrounding districts doing that? And what is their experience?
There are quite a few surrounding districts that are actually going out for RFP this year. There's one school district that actually wanted to entertain something new, which is doing a cooperative a cooperative food service company, and you know, I looked at it and I thought this could be great, but we have to go out, and they have not provided any more information and set the meeting for all of our school districts to get together. So we still have to continue to move, but it was a great option because I do believe that it would allow for our surrounding school districts to receive quality, because you figure all of us together will be able to put more money in the pot. And then we're talking about we could possibly have a company that is, you know, global, and they have enough staff. They're not dealing with the same issues that some of the smaller companies are dealing with. And it would be, the food will be prepared on site at the one school district, because they just built a state-of-the-art kitchen that can house all of the food.
She was ahead of the trend. So I think that was strategic. So absolutely it was. Is this a 1 year? Can we do it for 1 year, knowing that this is brand new and we potentially would want to be a part of a co-op in the future?
I do believe that we could allow for the contract to only be a 1 year. Chris, do you know if there's any stipulations?
I'm not aware of any prohibition against a 1 year contract.
Yeah. The co-op, so similar to a cooperative purchasing agreement, there's a collective body. And so, for example, our school district 162, they would be the house where all the food would be prepared. But there's about 7 or 8 school districts that are all a part of that same bid or RFP process, where we're sitting at the table to create that criteria for which food service company we desire, and then we go through the process as we would if it was only just one school, but we were be a collective body, and then we would share in those costs. So when the food service vendor submits their bills, they would take into account the number of students that are being served meals for breakfast and lunch, and then the total cost, and then they would divide those costs according to the number of students that each building has. So it allows for the cost to actually be potentially lower with higher quality products and service. The only issue, like I said, that I have is that it has gone stale. The district that, you know, reached out has not moved forward with meeting with the districts and setting a meeting with all of the school districts. Any other questions regarding? So we're good with the food service going for the RFP. And if I get an update from the outside district saying, hey, we're setting up a meeting, I will keep the board posted so that we can possibly entertain that as well. Okay, I'll move right along. Playground fencing. So when we completed the playground projects, the board asked for the cost to be assessed for how much it would cost to fence playgrounds. The fencing costs, there's a breakdown for each school: $40,000 for Woodgate, $36,000 for Maria Yates, Neil Armstrong $50,000, and Seton Prairie $29,000, for a total of $201,403.13. And so when we initially brought this to the board, letting you all know that it was quite expensive to fence, there wasn't really a final decision to move forward, so it's been asked for again, so we're bringing it back. This cost was as of June 5th of 2023. Therefore, the cost was this amount. It may have went up, gone down, or stayed the same. But if the board wants to move forward, we would have to go out to bid, because this is over $35,000, and then we would have to bring that bid for final approval of the board.
What kind of fencing is that? Is that wire fencing, iron, what is that? Chain link?
I would have to go back through to look at it. Let's see if I can click on it to give me more detail. So there are embedded links for you to take a look at. Let's see.
That would improve,
So
that would improve the way the
be-
property looks,
yeah.
but then if it is wrought iron, that rusts over time.
So these are just the, this is just the layout, the footprint of each school's locations to measure how much fence would be needed. I'll have to double check to see what type of fence. I do know that we discussed that it would look similar to what has already been put there, because there's a little bit of fencing at some of the schools that wasn't for the playground. And so what we didn't want to do was have a brand new fence that was totally different from what was already existing. So I will double check to make sure it is this fencing, but I do believe that was the conversation.
And so if we did that, we wouldn't have to do that and give up furnishings. Could we do both? You probably can't answer that now, but budget-wise, we need to prioritize. So can we do both, or do we have to pick one?
There's no link to for us to get to this stuff. Here. It's on that. Me too. Is it still with the LRC up there?
So the word fencing is the hyperlink. I'm sorry, I forgot. Who? Someone asked a question.
She asked about the, do we have enough?
Oh, do we have enough to do both? I want to answer this very, very, very well. Do we have enough? When we ask, do we have enough, that means we take a look at the fund balance. The district is healthy. The fund balance is great. Do we want to
Dig into it.
drain it all at the same time? Of course not. This is, when we're looking at the fund balance, $200,000 is not as heavy as a multi-million-dollar project. We do have to consider that we do have, we have negotiations, we have another one, and we also have the $15 million HVAC project that is split into a couple of years. And so with all of that in consideration,
But we did just spend all that money on playgrounds, but we're hearing, at least from certain stakeholders, that it's being brought down because of the new kids coming in and messing up the parks and stuff like that. So it's kind of like, if you invest in something and then they tear it back down, then we'll be doing that again to the park. When this money can save where it'll just be the school, PSU utilizing it. I know Edgecombe, we said that the kids are trash everywhere. That's why I was supposed to put trash kids.
We've always used it.
and then if they climb the fence, then we're risking,
We'll be repairing the fence.
yes, we're risking injury. But
And we put out trash cans, like we put brand new trash cans. People don't put the trash in the trash cans, so then our custodians have to clean it up. I mean, that's just part of, they have to clean the outside grounds anyway. Yeah, they have to, that, yeah.
Because I take my kids there a lot. So just looking at all of them. There's some kids out there, but I mean, we not want the kids to play. I mean, it's not like, I don't see like teenagers tearing it up necessarily. I think if they're out there at night, they probably feel it.
so, if the board decides to move forward, let me know, and then we can.
Well, we didn't really find out what kind of fencing, and so they probably only brought us one quote. And if it's chain link, that's probably the cheapest option, but if it's wrought iron, that's probably a more expensive option. So are there options? What is that?
I will provide the type of fencing. I'll reach out to Tom with TRIA to see what type of fence was this estimate prepared for. Okay. Last but not least, transportation to bid or not to bid. There's hyperlinks here for you. Our current contract was for the school years 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24. So we are coming to the end of our current contract. I want to make sure that I explain to the board that most of the transportation companies that we see are actually all connected because they are Cook, Illinois. And so when we go out to bid, Cook, Illinois is actually going to be the company that prepares the bid, prepares their proposal for our bid, and they're going to dispatch their bus company that is closest to us. Why? Because it helps to save the district money, because having a company that's further out, that has a 30-minute drive, causes other issues. It's more costly, number one, and number two, if a bus goes out and they need to send another bus, guess what? You're waiting 30 minutes because they're 30 minutes out. So they try to get you the company that is closest to you. So I wanted to make sure that that was stated. We do have Safeway that is not under that umbrella. They are a very reputable company. And then there is a couple other companies, but they're a little bit further away. Expended currently, from last year's data, $1.95 million. And that's what's been recorded with ESD on our transportation claim. Of that $1.9 million, we will receive reimbursements of $1,020,000. And so that leaves the remaining costs on the district, which would be $939,000. And so that's really good that we're getting those reimbursements. However, transportation contracts, we're allowed to contract for extension up to 2 years after our original contract. And then after those 2 years that's added at the end, we also are allowed to do a year-to-year contract, so long as no other company asks to solicit any of their proposals to us that we go out to bid. To date, I have not received any request from any transportation company requesting, to contract for services for us. So it is my recommendation that we extend our current contract for another 2 years. They
don't even have enough buses to service our kids
I
now,
was gonna
so
say.
why would we stay there? They have a van picking up my son.
So I did talk with the company, and that was one of the things that they mentioned, is that they are wanting to dispatch to us more buses because they now are able to do so. They said things have picked up. And this is Tom O'Sullivan, and I'm putting his name on record because he's the one that told me. And so he's like, he made it clear. He's like, we used to have about 22 buses for your district, and we do have the capacity now to offer more. So they want to take a look at that as well. So
Do they have adequate bus drivers for subbing? We're down about half of the fleet that we had. You mentioned that there was another company out there, and with that in mind, that we are half the capacity, does that other company have enough buses, enough bus drivers, enough substitute bus drivers to potentially be a great consideration?
I'm not sure if the other, what that other company has as far as their staffing is concerned. I just know that they are.
And if
Yeah,
Mr.
they
Sullivan
are
is
new
saying,
here. They're here in, I believe, Matheson, and they do have a location here, which is good. Not sure that they would be willing or that they have the capacity to actually add on another district. I don't know that information yet, but if the board would like me to engage the company to find out their capacity, we can definitely do that.
and then if Mr. Sullivan is saying more buses, can you put a number on that?
I will ask him what his number is, and as well as for his buses, as well as his staff.
we got promised, and my district's with a different company, but things were promised, and oh my goodness, you know, and then people, when school starts, and then all these people that start don't end up coming back to work or quit or, you know, whatever. So it's, you know, some of those issues you're going to have.
No matter what company you're with.
But I think we've had, how long have we had this company? This is the second one we switched to, right?
This is the company that my first year with the district is when they arrived. So this is the third year of the contract.
So I think we've been having problems with them since they've been here then.
But they had COVID issues and staffing issues
Okay,
that
okay.
wasn't there before.
And that was global. Mhm.
Everybody else, but I would like to look and just to see what others have.
There's only, like I said, there's only one company I know that's in close proximity. The other companies are, they're a little too far, and they didn't even put in a bid the last time, and that was back in 2021. They didn't put in a bid.
I definitely would like to put money back in our community, so it's okay for me to see what Maxa sends us, at least just to entertain a conversation. And then if they're not what we are expecting, then we can just go back to what we are accustomed to.
Absolutely. I will look into engaging Safeway.
And then one last thing, I think it's only going back to the fences. It says just option one, so do they only go to one company to find out about the fences, or do they do multiple?
And do we have to do that through TRIA? Do we have to
You
do the
said-
fencing through TRIA only?
No, meaning like more big, like is it just?
Remember, we had the other people.
It depends on what piece of the probably somebody else for that.
Yes, but the other option I would have to pull. I know that this was the better option, but I can pull that and get that from TRIA and provide that to the board in the boardogram.
What
if
is
you
TRIA's
like,
fee?
or-
Because couldn't we bid this out to somebody outside of TRIA, maybe give somebody else an opportunity?
So long as it's a company, an architect that the district has already been dealing with. If it's a new architectural company, it's a maximum of $50,000 of that contract with that architect. That's the maximum. DLA.
Because we're using TRIA for everything. We need to diversify.
Keep trying. They just be higher than
No, for the small stuff.
They was in Peoria, right? Remember Peoria? Was it Texas or Peoria?
They have 2 locations.
Okay, yeah, we can do what Ms. Franklin said as well, that would be good.
Okay, so we want to look at a different architectural company for the fencing and look into Safeway for transportation.
Yes.
Okay, will do. If there are no other questions, this concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Owens. Woo-hoo. All right. I will now turn it over to our board secretary.
I'm like, sorry about that. No, we do not have any, we do not have any audience to visit. Madam President, yeah, because I'm over here being nosy, I was trying to.
This time, that concludes our committee of the whole. We look forward to seeing each and every one of you next week at our regular scheduled board meeting, 6:30 p.m. Our committee of the whole, I do have a question in regards to that, Chris. If we don't, because everything we went over today is what we voted on next week. So
We don't have to do
we
committee of the
don't
whole.
need to go to committee of the whole. Can we come at 6:30 or do we still need to be, 7:30 or do we need to be here?
You talking about closed session?
Yeah, we don't have to go into.
No, if
closed
you don't
session.
need to go into closed session, you can just start the meeting at 7:30 then.
So we can just be here at 7:30?
Yeah.
Is that everybody, is that okay with everybody?
Well, we gotta make sure. When you
Is it,
upload,
it's
we
not
can-
possible to move the meeting up to 6:30?
You can meet at 6:30, yeah.
Can we move it up to 6:30?
But the problem is the way your agenda is drafted, it says 6:30 closed session, 7:30 open session.
We got time to change.
Yeah, you can change it for sure.
Yeah, we haven't, it hasn't been posted, it hasn't been posted.
Because we don't need a closed session this week.
Yeah, so you could just start the meeting at 6:30. I would recommend you do that going forward forever. I was explaining that to Dr. Brunson earlier, because the way you have it, been doing it the last few months, is you say 6:30 closed session, 7:30 open. So if you go into closed session at 6:30 in there for 5 minutes, then you have to wait 55 minutes to start your open session. Yeah.
But we don't need to put no writings or anything to change that.
No, just post the agenda just like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So meeting at 6:30 next week.
Okay, roll call.
I'm sorry. Motion to go into closed session.
So motion to adjourn.
See, today is the day.
We go back.
Today is the day, isn't it? It is. No.
Okay, motion to adjourn, guys.
Motion.
Second. Second by John. Phillips.